What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the He Heard podcast, episode 12.
Yup.
Good to be back. Andrew's rocking his Saints. Wasn't a great year for you, but
Always got a rep though, no matter what.
Always got a rep. So big news here. Big news on the He Heard podcast. As you guys know, Andrew and I have been teammates for the past year. That is no longer a thing anymore. Andrew has quit the soccer team. He's gone. He's free of the chains. How does it feel?
My next chapter, KD. My next chapter. I don't know. I mean, it feels good. Like, I don't know. Soccer was just, I don't know. I wasn't enjoying it anymore, so I was like, I'm out. Peace.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah.
He heard. Full-time He Heard now.
Full-time He Heard. I guess you could say that he was almost captive. On that note, we got my guy Finn with it. We got Finn here with me. Finn, say what's up.
What's up?
Finn is what? Freshman, sophomore, GCSU?
Freshman, GCSU.
Big nursing guy again. Shout out Blake.
We have a lot of nerds on this podcast sometimes.
We do have a lot of nerds, including Andrew.
How am I a nerd, bro?
Anyways, so today the topic is taking your thoughts captive, which explains the corny joke that I just made about Andrew being captive. But Finn, man, it's been a while since we've talked, but it's amazing to see you again. Again, another GCSU guys. I told you guys that we're gonna have a bunch of GCSU guys, and so today, yeah, we're talking about taking your thoughts captive. So if you watched the Blake episode, you know what's about to happen. Pop shot testimony. Give me it 1 minute, and let's get right into it.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a Christian household with my parents. They always pointed me towards the right direction, but I started growing my own faith, I think in around 11th grade. I had this youth group leader named Chandler, and he was a really good influence on me. And I'd say I was still in the wrong crowd though, a little bit. I was still smoking some. I'd still on the weekends and all that. I didn't start following Jesus until I got to college. And shout out Frankie. We met him at the Max, and right then I was going out and I was still drinking first 2 weeks of school and smoking some. And I talked to him. He invited me to this group called Campus Outreach. And ever since then, I have not smoked. I have not drank since then. And Jesus has just been on my heart constantly. And it's changed my life completely around. I could talk so much more about it, but that's my little pop shot testimony. 1 minute.
Bro, let's go. Shout out Frankie for sure. I mean, we've already had Frankie on here. I want to get him on his own episode along with Michael, but you know, we've talked about Frankie. So when I texted you and said I wanted to have you on, your first thing that you said you wanted to talk about was taking your thoughts captive. And I asked you if you could talk about it for 30 minutes, and you were like, bro, easily. So for you, what is taking your thoughts captive, and where does that come from in the Bible?
Yeah. So I think for me, taking my thoughts captive at first, so I didn't mention this too much in my testimony, but before college, I struggled a lot with like pornography and stuff like that. So taking my thoughts captive, I think a lot of it, what it comes from for me is Philippians 4. So when it talks about, so I'm just going to read Philippians 4:6. So do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So I think that guarding your mind is kind of the same as taking your thoughts captive. You know, surrendering those thoughts to Christ is what we should be doing with all of our thoughts, whether it be lustful thoughts or just any thoughts that we have. Just start asking ourselves, you know, are these honoring to God? And that's immediately where my mind went, because that's something I've always struggled with, just like thoughts running through my mind.
Yeah, that's good. And then it's what is it? 2 Corinthians 10. Where is it? Verse 5-6. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ, and we'll be ready to punish every act of disobedience. So how did you, with that lust and with whatever you were dealing with, how did you like take these two verses, these two things that we can look at and be like, okay, take your thoughts captive. Okay, don't be anxious about anything. How did you actively apply that to your life, and how did you see the fruit after that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think if we go back to, for me, first semester, I was still struggling a lot with pornography. And taking my thoughts captive, I think a lot of it was what's going into your mind. What are you letting in? What are you letting influence your behavior? So whether it be like Instagram, whether it be any social media, TV, movies, music, all those things are going to be constantly influencing where your head's going, what you're thinking about. And so taking thoughts captive, it's like in the moment you can take thoughts captive, but those thoughts, why are you having them? What's leading you to have those thoughts? So I think that's like the biggest part for me is, so I've changed a lot of what I've looked at. Like for me, I used to look at a lot of just I just watch some I'd watch TV, and that's just TV's fine, but I could watch a lot of TV with just explicit scenes and just not think twice about it. Or for me this year, a big one is music. Music, honestly, I think I treated music like my God for a while back in high school. I just would always listen to secular music. And now this year, I've changed that. I'm doing all gospel music this year, which has been very, very difficult for me personally. But that has changed a lot of just my views of like taking thoughts captive, just what you let into your mind is going to change completely what's going to come out of you.
Right, like it says in Proverbs 4:23, I think, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So like you were saying, like before the thoughts even come to your mind, guard your heart so that those thoughts can even flow from your heart, because the thoughts are stuff that is coming from your heart and is flowing into your mind. So like before you even get to taking those thoughts captive, guard your heart. Like in that way, those thoughts that you need to be taken captive will become less and less and less. Um, and so, I guess why do you think it's so important? Like, why was it so hard for you to do, and why is it so important? Like, is the devil all over that, or why is it so important?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's so important to take captive those thoughts because without taking captive those thoughts, it's going to lead you to a lot of just bad, sinful habits. For me personally, I know it led me to a lot of lustful thoughts. Just taking captive those thoughts. I'm actually gonna shout out Flea real quick. So Flea is this group. I know it's been shouted out a couple times, but it's just accountability group that we have with all these guys from GCSU, Dillon, and a couple other guys from UGA and other places. So just being able to like constantly confess, I think that leads to such a deep relationship with Jesus and the community around you that's just focused on Jesus so much. So that's just, I think that's a part of what taking captive some of your thoughts, taking captive your thoughts can be, is just through confession and through community. They can just lead each other to Jesus constantly.
Yeah, it's so good. It's again, I think we're on episode 12, and every single episode we've talked about community and we've talked about prayer. So let's just check that off the list again.
Yeah, and Finn, what does that confession look like? So like when you have one of those thoughts that you're trying to get rid of and you want to go to your guys, what does it like? How do you word that type of confession to your friends?
Yeah, definitely. I confessed one today, so I'll just go ahead and read that. So this morning, I woke up with some lustful thoughts. So literally, straight up, I just said, woke up with some lustful thoughts this morning. Would love some prayers. So even before you sin, but when you get that initial thought of just like a little bit of lust in your mind or a little bit of pride, a little bit of jealousy, just initially confessing that right away and asking for prayers, I think it makes it so much harder for you to go back into that sin when you've asked for those prayers.
Yeah, and even like that's like not even like biblically. That's just like going to like for example, like when you have a weed, if you're just like constantly trimming the weed, like if you're just like going to the thoughts, like if you wait for the thought to develop and then you confess it, like the weed is going to continue to grow and it's never going to die. But like what you're doing is you're going and you're taking out the root of the thought. Even though you're just waking up and you're maybe not even fully conscious of what you're thinking, or like it's just a small thought, you're not actually going to act on it. You're cutting out the root, like you're yanking the root out of the ground so that it never develops into anything else, and that's really really good.
Yeah, and then on top of that, within confession, it's not only with people, like it's with the Lord as well. So once you start getting those thoughts, like you see that thought pop into your mind, what I do for myself personally is I just say it out loud. I'm just like, God, that thought is not of you. I give that to you. Like I completely confess my mind and like sacrifice my mind to you right now, because I know that thought is not of you. Like the devil has no hold on me here. And if the more and more you confess it, the more and more you give it to God, then less and less you're going to have those thoughts, or the less and less those thoughts are going to be able to take captive of you, because you have just fully overcome them and they like just truly have no hold on you anymore. So I guess the question leading from that is like if we can do all these things and like we may be in these habits of confession, we do all these things, why do we still feel so out of control of our thoughts? Like why is that still such a present problem even when we are doing these things that we've been taught to do?
Yeah, I have this one example. I'm sure somebody smarter than me said it, but basically, so we can, so if a bird flies over our head, we can't control that, but we can stop a bird from building a nest in our head. So it's the same thing with thoughts. Thoughts are going to fly in and out of your mind constantly, just like birds fly over your head. But do you allow that thought to take rest in your head? You're allowing that, I think. I think thoughts, we allow those thoughts to sit in our mind. So being able to just, um, I don't know, taking captive those thoughts are just, I think it's just so imperative, just constantly just leaning back into community. And I think one thing that's helped me a little bit, just some practical steps of just being in constant confession and constant just surrender to God would be just literally just walking with open hands, like actively walking with your hands being open. So just allowing God to, like, your life's in your hands, you're handing it up to God and you're allowing God to put things in your hands. You're not holding hands tight, trying to grasp onto what you think God's going to give you, or you're not holding so tight onto things and just not allowing God to take them away if they're not good for you, but just walking right in front of you just with open hands and trusting God completely.
Yeah, yeah. So with the open hand thing, is that like you're physically walking with like hands open?
Yeah, physically walking like throughout my day with open hands, or a lot of the times when I'm in prayer, like we do at Wesley, I like to get on my knees a lot and pray. And if I notice, like, I just open my hands fully and just surrender everything I have to God. I think that's what it looks like for me most of the time. But also, yeah, walking around my day, just trying to be more intentional just by opening my hands.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So what like with those open hands, like where do you find the I don't know, I guess the link between the thoughts and the like is it when you're closing your hands or like when you're imagining yourself closing your hands, is that you almost like allowing
Receiving.
those thoughts to get the nest?
Receiving, yeah.
Yeah, like is that you like receiving the thoughts or that's you like taking these thoughts and like closing off God almost? And is the open hands almost like allowing yourself to hear the things of God and almost letting go of the thoughts that are not good for you?
Yeah. So closing hands. So like we did this in this ministry once where we like closed our hands as tight as we could and held them there for a while. And so so this is like without surrendering our thoughts to God, this is what our minds are like constantly, just constantly holding on to these things that we don't want to let go of. But when we open our hands, you can feel them become so much untensed. And it's almost hard to open your hands if you hold them there for such a long time. And I think it's the same way with thoughts. We connect that to thoughts by constantly opening your hands is like surrendering that to God. It's handing over all of your thoughts to God. So that's the way I like to see it. And just a practical use of just straight up just closing your hands as tight as you can, hold it there for a while. That's your resting point right now. That's where we are right now. But when you realize that you can trust God and you can trust Him with everything, you can just fully open your hands and surrender it all to God, and you just feel so much relief.
That's good. That's so I've genuinely never thought of it like that. That's insane. That's so good. Um, you talk about the thoughts, like you talked about how you struggle with lustful thoughts, and you talked about how you struggled with weed and stuff like that. Is it only limited to that stuff? Like where do you find these thoughts? Because I think a lot of times people can get so overcautious with the lust or so overcautious with pride that they almost let some of the other thoughts trickle into their mind and almost like ignore them and forget about them. So what are some things that you think almost go like some thoughts that almost go under the radar that are just not of God and that are fully from the devil?
Um, Honestly, I think there could be so many different examples of that. I know for me, one thing I was like kind of stressing about yesterday, not even stressed, just a little anxious about. I think because I'm not in a relationship and I've never been in a relationship. So for me, I've been struggling with completely surrendering that to God, knowing that He's gonna, like Psalms 86:11, God's gonna withhold no good things from us, from His faithful servants. So that can look like so many different things. For me, it's just right now, it's been surrendering my future relationship, God willing, and just already surrendering that in His hands. I there's so many things that could look like. I know jealousy has been a big one for me a little bit recently. Just learning to confess that too has helped a lot. So I think it could look like so many different things though.
I think I think for me in specific, I think a big thing was comparison. Like whether that be within relationships, whether that be within sports, whether that be within all these things. Like if you are, let's say, for example, your friend gets this big ministry opportunity. Like he just got invited to speak at a church, and like it's amazing. Like let's say it's passion. Like this dude, he just blew up. Now he's speaking in front of passion, in front of 50,000 people, and you're at a church with 100 members. Like you are still like you're so blessed with that opportunity to speak to 100 people. But the comparison, if you let that thought be like, oh, but he's serving in front of 50,000 people, your hands are closed, like tight, shut, and you're not going to be able to be fully happy and fully content with what the Lord has given you because you're so caught up in comparing yourself to the friend that's speaking in front of 50,000 people. Obviously, it'd be amazing to speak in front of 50,000 people, but being content and being happy with those gifts, I think, goes along with that open-handed mindset that you're talking about, which is actually like, yeah, that's so insane. Like that's such a cool thing to think about. I'm gonna start applying that to my life now. So that's amazing.
Just being content with wherever God puts you is just it's hard to do, but that I think boils down to trust, trusting that God's going to use you where you are because you're walking with those open hands.
Right, right.
Yeah. So Finn, one more question. Like, so say someone younger to you or a newer Christian than you like came to you and was like, Finn, how do I take control of my thoughts? What would you give them as step one to like take control of their thoughts and sort of get those thoughts out of their mind?
Step one. So this is something TJ actually said to me a while ago. It might not be step one, but it's like a practical step that I like to use. So whenever you notice yourself in a simple habit like that you want to get out of, so literally just whispering the name Jesus. It sounds a little silly, but just Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Just saying that over and over and over. That was my step one. That really helped me a lot. Just that practical step of just saying Jesus when and it redirects your mind from the sinful things onto what we should be focusing on constantly, praying continuously. Just being in constant relationship, constant conversation with God. So I think that is just step one, just trying to reach out, trying to just pray. I think prayer is so powerful. It's so important. I know it's changed me a lot. So step one, just ask God to take those desires away from you. And just ask God for things because ask God for those things because it could help you so much. Um, and God's going to provide. Those things aren't good. So God, it's very, very possible that God's just going to want to take those away from you. And if not, it's going to be something that you can struggle with and work through, but God's going to be with you at all times through those.
Right. He's faithful and he doesn't tempt you with anything that nobody has overcome before. That's somewhere in the Bible. Somewhere. I know it's in there. If Frankie was in there, he could tell us. But yeah, I think
And like one other thing with that, like even like when you pray, like you said, step one for you is just like saying His name. Like you don't have to pray formally. Like you can just be like quick, like, hey God, I don't want that thought, take it away, and that's it. Like that's like the first step. Like is just being informal with God. Like he just wants to like have a conversation with us, and he wants to see that we actually like have the good motivation to like get that stuff out of our mind, and that's all He cares about.
Mm. And then even when you're saying with Jesus, I think I can't remember where I heard this, but the name Yahweh for Jesus is literally a breath in and a breath out. It's Yahweh, Yahweh. So like even you're gonna breathe throughout your day. You have to. It's the way you stay alive. So if you practically take that step to think, okay, breath in is Yah, breath out is way. Breath in is Yah, breath out is way. It's Jesus, 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 Jesus. And it's just like constant. Like if you, I mean, it's not going to take much. Like, it's you're breathing. Just be like, okay, this one's Yah, that one's way. This one's Yah, that one's way. It's going to be very hard for those thoughts to have one control of your brain, the Yahweh being a breath, and then, oh, that girl's butt looks fat today. Like, those those two aren't really gonna be able to be in your brain at the same time. It's gonna be very, very clashing. I think so. Like using that Jesus one in an even easier way is just breathing and thinking, okay, this is Yah, that's way. So, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I don't have anything else. I don't know if you do.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to mention too that I didn't mention earlier was we we really can't shut our thoughts off, and that's okay. Like thoughts are really they're gonna run through your brain, and that's okay. But just being in constant surrender of them is so important. We can always invite God into our thoughts, whether we can turn them off or not. So I just want to mention that just real quick.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Well, thank you, Finn. Amazing talking to you, brother. This is I'm already feeling it. This is gonna go out into a lot of people, and it's gonna I'm already opening my hands. I'm feeling it. So I'm looking around the crowd, and I'm seeing everybody opening their hands too. So I'm excited to get this out to you guys. Next week is our break week. Don't forget. But we'll be back with you.
Great timing. Spring break for us, too.
Facts.
So great timing.
Great timing for us. So we'll be back with you in 2 weeks. This will be out to you. You're listening to this on Sunday or whenever you're listening to it. But, this has been Finn Goss and Taking Your Thoughts Captive. And we are the He Heard Podcast. This is a free man, a newly free man, almost like a newlywed.
Free man says subscribe.
Free man says subscribe.
Subscribe.
Shackled Man says review, like, and comment. And we will see you guys next week.